Hoon passed the Alpha's seat on his way up the aisle, and the Alpha's scent spiked, cool and a little smoky, there while Hoon was within range, and gone as soon as he was past. His face stayed what it needed to be. He had been hiding this for so long that the hiding was automatic. He reached the galley and stood there with his hand flat on the counter until he trusted himself. It had been months of this. The same man, every week, in first class, and the same small, involuntary thing his body did every time Hoon got close. Hoon had been ignoring it for all of them, because ignoring it was easier than the alternative. Tomorrow, the Alpha would be on the plane again. The spike would come again. And Hoon was not sure anymore how much longer he could keep pretending he had not noticed. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Now, back to the story. Hoon had been on the Chicago to San Francisco route for 6 months when it happened, and he had noticed Jack on the second flight. Noticing was not the right word for it. Noticing was what you did with a passenger who asked for extra ice or who forgot to stow his laptop before takeoff. What Hoon did with Jack was closer to cataloging. First flight. Hoon had not registered him at all, because Hoon was new on the route and running on autopilot, memorizing the galley layout, learning which overhead bins always stuck, figuring out which senior he was going to get along with and which ones he was going to have to work around. The next week, walking into first class at boarding, Hoon looked up to see the same Alpha settling in, and his body told him something before his mind caught up. He had walked past with a smile and a glass of water and thought, same guy. The week after that, same. The week after that, same. By the second month, he was not looking for confirmation anymore. He was checking the manifest out of habit because Jack, whose full name Hoon, had read off the loading sheet one evening and then spent the rest of the flight trying to put back out of his head, was on it. The SF to Chicago evening return. Once a week, every week, same flight, same direction. There were a dozen San Francisco to Chicago flights a day on the carrier alone, and Jack was on Hoon's. First class, sometimes the aisle, sometimes the window, whatever the upgrade got him. Always within Hoon's line of sight when Hoon worked the forward galley. Hoon worked the forward galley a lot. Seniority on the route was still something he was building, but he liked first class, liked the smaller number of passengers, liked the choreography of the service. His senior, a woman named Marisol who had been flying for longer than Hoon had been alive, had taken one look at him during his first rotation and decided he had the temperament for the front. Marisol did not hand out opinions often, and when she did, they carried weight. So Hoon worked the front, and every Wednesday evening he walked up the aisle with the dinner service. And every Wednesday Jack was somewhere in first class. And every Wednesday, the same thing happened. Hoon would come within arm's reach to serve him. Jack's scent would spike. Hoon would keep walking. Jack would not look up, or if he did, his eyes would slide over Hoon's face with the same polite detachment he gave to the cabin wall, and he would nod his thanks and go back to his laptop, polite and professional. Brief eye contact, and then away. The first time Hoon was certain of it, he was a few months into the route, bent at the waist to retrieve a dropped pen from the floor of the forward row. When he stood back up with his shoulder close to Jack's knee, he caught the shift, cold, warming at the edges for a single breath, and Jack, in that single breath, was looking at a point on the seatback screen that was not the seatback screen. Hoon had walked back to the galley and stood in it with his hand flat on the counter until the feeling passed. After that, he knew. It happened on every flight. The spike was never big. It was consistent, though, and only when Hoon was within arm's length, and Jack, for his part, acted as though nothing was happening. He did not flirt, did not linger, and in 6 months of weekly flights, had never once asked Hoon's name. Hoon had asked Marisol about him once. Casually, he thought. He had asked if she knew the Alpha in the dark suit who flew with them most Wednesdays, and Marisol had looked at him over the top of her reading glasses for a second longer than Hoon was comfortable with, and then said, "His name is Jack. He is a consultant. He tips in cash. And if you are asking me what I think you are asking me, the answer is, leave it." "Leave what?" Hoon had said. "Whatever it is you are thinking about. I am not thinking about anything. I have been doing this for 20 years, Hoon. You are thinking about something. He had dropped it, because he was not going to do anything about it anyway. He did not have the time or the money or the bandwidth for anything that was not the job he was working or the dream he was working toward. And the dream was the only thing that had ever mattered to him, and the dream was expensive. Hoon was 24 years old. He was an Omega. He had been saving since his first paycheck, and by the end of next year he was going to be in flight school. That was the entire shape of his life. He had grown up in a small town in southern Illinois, in a house where his father's old flight jacket had hung on the coat hook by the back door for as long as Hoon had been able to remember. His father had been a regional pilot, a good one, flying small turboprops into towns where the runway was shorter than the flight number. When Hoon was 11, his father had gone in for a routine physical and had come out with a cardiac issue that would never heal all the way, and that had been the end of his career. He had not flown again. He had not recovered, either. Not really. He had taken an office job at a logistics company and had been steady about it. And he had loved Hoon's mother and been a good father. But there had been a shelf in him that stayed empty. And Hoon, growing up, had watched that shelf and had understood, early, that a person could lose the thing that made them who they were and go on living anyway. It was not the loss that had scared him. It was the going on living anyway. He had wanted to fly since he was 6. After his father grounded, the wanting had gotten stubborner and more private, and a little afraid of itself. He skipped college. Nobody in his family had the money for it, and he did not have the heart for 4 more years of classrooms when what he wanted was in the air. He took the flight attendant training course the summer after he graduated high school because it was the shortest path to a jetway door a broke 18-year-old could legally walk through. It paid better than anything else he could get without a degree. It put him in the air every week. It let him watch the captains work the pre-flight checks from the galley door and pick up the rhythm of the job he actually wanted, like a kid learning an instrument by sitting outside a practice room and listening through the wall. He had been on the line for 6 years now. He was good at it. He liked being good at it. But every time the flight deck door opened, he felt the old wanting light up like it had not eaten in a while. He had run the numbers more times than he wanted to admit. Commercial flight training, start to finish, with the ratings he wanted, was going to cost him somewhere in the neighborhood of $90,000. He had saved 60. He was going to have the rest by the end of next year if he did not do anything stupid. And Hoon, at 24, had made doing nothing stupid into a way of life. The 60 was 6 years of the job. Every paycheck, a cut went into the account before he let himself see it. The first years, the cuts were small because the pay was small, but he never missed one. Not for a car repair, not for a bad month, not for a birthday he would rather have spent somewhere nice. The spreadsheet he kept went back to his first pay stub. He had updated it the first of every month since he was 18. 1 salary, 1 apartment, 1 life held carefully. Looking at the number on the bottom row felt like looking at himself. There was also a purser evaluation coming up in the spring. A senior position, a pay bump, a bid preference on routes. Marisol had put his name forward, which she did not do often. And the training slots were narrow, and attendance was the single metric they weighted above everything else. Hoon had been tracking it quietly since the paperwork went in. Dating was stupid. Not in principle, but in practice. For him, right now. He had watched too many people his age fall into relationships that required money he did not have and evenings he could not give. He had seen his own friends put off plans, put off moves, put off dreams, because somebody had asked them to stay for dinner 1 too many times. He was not going to be that person. He was going to get his license first, and then, maybe, if he still had the energy for it after all of that, he would let himself want something else. That was the plan. The plan did not account for a consulting alpha with a specific scent and a habit of looking away at the exact wrong moment. On a Wednesday evening in the middle of all of it, Hoon walked up the aisle with the dinner service and watched Jack's hand tighten around the pen he was holding the instant Hoon got within arm's reach. On another Wednesday, Hoon leaned past Jack to retrieve a discarded napkin from the empty seat beside him and heard Jack exhale very slowly through his nose. Another time, Hoon handed him his tea. Black, no sugar, one slice of lemon on the saucer, and Jack took it with steady fingers and said thank you in a voice that was a quarter tone lower than the one he used to decline the pretzels. Hoon went home that night to his studio in Rogers Park and sat on the edge of his bed for an hour with the lights off and thought about whether he was losing his mind or whether he was not. And he was not. The turbulence happened on a Wednesday. It was not the gentle dip of a crosswind or the polite shudder of a cabin settling through a layer of warmer air. The floor left his feet for half a breath. The overhead bins groaned against their latches. Every cup on every tray table jumped into the air. Hoon was almost to the galley. Service tray in his left hand, the empty glasses from row 1 already stacked, his right hand lifting toward the curtain when the seatbelt chime rang late and the plane dropped for real. He was already moving through the narrow space between the bulkhead and the lavatory door where two people could not comfortably stand at once, and Jack was coming out of the lavatory. Hoon's body pitched forward, and Jack caught him. One arm around his waist, hard, the other braced against the bulkhead behind Hoon's head, the whole weight of him between Hoon and the wall, absorbing the second, smaller drop that followed the first. Hoon felt Jack's palm flat against his lower back through his uniform shirt, and he felt the breath go out of Jack in a hard, low sound that was not quite a word, and he smelled him. Not the ghost of the scent he had been cataloging for months. The whole thing, the tea and the smoke warming against Jack's skin, and something under it that Hoon had not been close enough to catch before. His knees went loose. One of the empty glasses began to slide off the tilted tray, and Jack's other hand moved off the bulkhead and caught it before it fell. Jack did not look at Hoon. He was looking over the top of Hoon's head at the wall, at nothing, holding very still on purpose. The plane steadied. The captain's voice crackled overhead, apologizing for the bump. Jack's arm stayed where it was, longer than it had needed to, and then it was gone. He stepped back. He set the glass Hoon had almost dropped onto the tray with surgical care, not letting his fingers touch Hoon's, and when his eyes finally met Hoon's, they were dark, pupils wide, and he was not looking at Hoon like a passenger looks at a flight attendant. "Sorry," he said. His voice was wrong, rough at the edges. "Are you okay, sir?" Jack's mouth moved, not quite into a smile. "I am fine." He returned to his seat and did not look up again for the rest of the flight. The following week, Jack was not on the manifest. He had not booked the flight home, which was unusual, and which Hoon noticed because he had gotten into the habit of noticing. He thought about the arm around his waist and the scent that had held against his back, and how Jack had said sorry times in a voice that was not his voice, and he did not stop thinking about any of it all week. The week after that, Jack was in first class again, as though nothing had happened. Hoon walked past him with the pre-departure water service, and Jack looked up and nodded and said thank you. And the scent spike, when it came, was no worse than usual. Hoon almost laughed. He had convinced himself that something had shifted between them on the night of the turbulence, and it turned out that the line was only his. Jack was exactly as contained as he had ever been. Jack was going to get on this plane every week for as long as his contract required it, and he was never going to do anything about any of it, and Hoon was going to have to put the whole thing down and walk away from it like an adult. That was what Hoon told himself for the whole flight. Then, at the end of it, after Hoon had done the final cabin check and handed off the paperwork and walked up the jetway into the terminal, Jack was standing at the end of it, and Hoon stopped walking. It took him a second to be sure. The terminal was crowded. Jack could have been waiting for anyone, or on the phone, or connecting to another flight. He was not doing any of those things. He was standing just past the gate counter with his bag at his feet and his hands in his coat pockets and his face turned toward the jetway door, and he was waiting for Hoon. Hoon's internal voice, which had been fairly well behaved up to this point, lost its composure in a hurry. He was not waiting for him. He could not be waiting for him. Hoon had imagined this. Hoon had imagined a lot of things in the past week, some of them mortifying, and now he was imagining this. Jack was waiting for a car. Jack was waiting for a coworker. Jack was an adult man in a terminal, and the probability that he was waiting for the Omega flight attendant who had flinched into his chest during turbulence was, on any reasonable assessment, basically zero. Then Jack saw him, and Jack moved, and Hoon's body, which had been walking normally up to this point, forgot how walking worked. "Hoon," Jack said, when he was close enough to be heard. It was the first time Jack had ever said his name. Hoon's name was on his uniform, had been on the manifest, had been on the 1,000 tiny interactions where Jack had read it and known it and not once used it. Hearing it in Jack's voice, at the end of a jetway, with Jack standing there like he had been working up to the moment for the entire flight, opened up a space inside Hoon's chest that was not going to be easy to close again. "Hi," Hoon said. It was the best he had. Jack was holding a bag. Not his work bag, which was still at his feet. A smaller one, paper, rope handles, a bag that came from a specific store. Hoon had not registered it from the other end of the terminal. Up close, he could not register anything else. "That was my last trip out for work," Jack said. He said it like someone reading a line they had rehearsed. A little too even. A little too fast. "Oh," Hoon said. "I wanted to give this to you for providing such great service." Hoon looked at the bag. He looked back at Jack's face. Jack was looking at a point somewhere over Hoon's left shoulder. "Okay," Hoon said. Jack held out the bag, and Hoon took it. There was a beat where neither of them said anything. And the beat went on a second too long, and Hoon realized in that second that Jack did not have a plan for what came after this. He had a plan for handing over the bag. He did not have a plan for the silence afterward. "Have a good flight," Jack said. Hoon almost pointed out that the flight was over. He did not. "Thanks," he said. Jack picked up his work bag. He turned. He walked toward the terminal exit without looking back, and Hoon stood there holding the paper bag and watching him go. And the only thought in Hoon's head, very clear, was that an intimidating alpha in a perfectly tailored coat had just attempted to execute a rehearsed interaction, and had not, by any generous reading, stuck the landing. Hoon got on the blue line back to Rogers Park with the bag in his lap. He did not look inside it. He told himself he was going to wait until he got home. He told himself he was going to open it like a reasonable person, at his kitchen counter, with the lights on. He made it as far as the Jefferson Park stop before he opened it, and inside were 3 things. The first was a box of chocolates. Small, dark wood, something that cost more than Hoon was comfortable thinking about. He recognized the name on the lid. They were from a shop on the Magnificent Mile Hoon had walked past without ever thinking about going in. The second was a velvet pouch. Hoon untied it with fingers that were not entirely cooperating, and a bracelet slid into his palm. Thin, dark metal, not silver, not gold, something quieter. A single small stone set into it that Hoon did not know how to identify and could not have afforded if he had. The third was a folded piece of paper. Hoon sat on the blue line and held it in his hand and thought about putting it away, about reading this somewhere less exposed than a train car. He opened it anyway. "Hoon, I have rewritten this 3 times and it keeps getting worse, so I'm going to keep it short. You may have noticed that I am on your flights a lot. I want to be honest that at some point it stopped being about the project and started being about the flights. I rearranged my schedule to keep them. My project is ending, and this is the last week I will be on your route, and I did not want it to end without you knowing. I have not said anything to you because I was not sure what I was feeling was something I had any right to put on you. I still am not sure. So I am leaving this decision to you. If you do not want to hear from me, I apologize for the gift, and you can keep it or get rid of it. No hard feelings. If you do, my number is below. Either way, thank you. Jack." Hoon read it more than once, then he put the paper back in the bag, and he folded the bag closed in his lap. And he sat on the blue line until his stop with his hands flat on top of the bag like he was trying to keep it from floating away. He did not text Jack that night, and he did not text him the next day either. Hoon sat in his studio apartment on a Friday night, and had what he later decided to think of as a small crisis of the will. He read the letter again. He kept putting the bracelet on and taking it off. He ate some of the chocolates. None of it made him feel any clearer about what he was going to do. On Saturday morning, he picked up his phone and typed Times "Thank you for the gifts" Times and deleted it. He tried again. He tried a third time. What he ended up sending, because he was tired of not sending anything, was Times "This is Hoon. Thank you for the gift. It was very kind," Jack replied in under a minute. "I'm glad you received it. May I take you to dinner?" Hoon sat on the edge of his bed with his phone in his hand and the bracelet on his wrist, which he had, at some point in the last minute, put back on without noticing. And he thought, this is the part where you say no. He typed Times "Yes" Times and sent it. Then he put the phone face down on the bed and put his head in his hands and laughed. One short laugh into his palms, because he was in so much more trouble than he had ever been in his life. Jack picked him up on Tuesday at 7. He had offered, in a handful of increasingly short text exchanges, a restaurant downtown that Hoon had never heard of, and a car that Hoon had refused, and finally a compromise where Jack would drive. Hoon had spent the day before the date picking out what to wear, more carefully than he had picked anything out in years, and had settled on dark jeans and a button-down he had bought years ago for a cousin's wedding and had not worn since. In the mirror, he looked like someone who had spent way too much time thinking about what he was about to do. Jack arrived in a car that was older than Hoon had expected. Not a beater. A well-kept sedan, a few years out from new. A car a man who did not want to be noticed for his car would pick on purpose. Jack was standing next to it in a coat Hoon had seen him wear on flights. But under the coat he was in a sweater instead of a suit. And the sweater was a soft gray blue that did unfair things to his eyes. Hoon came down the steps of his building, and Jack saw him and straightened up from where he had been leaning against the car. And Hoon watched, in real time. Jack failed to decide what to do with his hands. This was the thing Hoon had not been prepared for, because Jack was bad at this. Not across a first-class cabin. Across a first-class cabin he had been perfectly composed, a man who knew exactly where to look and what to say, and how long a silence should be. But on a sidewalk in Rogers Park on a Tuesday night, with Hoon walking toward him in jeans and the bracelet still on his wrist, Jack was visibly trying to decide whether he should hug Hoon or shake his hand. He settled on opening the door. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Hoon said. Jack opened the passenger door. He held it for Hoon with the concentrated focus of a man who had recently read an article about the correct way to hold a door. Hoon got in. Jack closed it and walked around the front of the car. And before he opened the driver's door, Hoon caught him mouthing something short to himself that might have been a single word of encouragement. "I made a reservation for 7:30, Jack said, as he started the car. "Okay. Are you hungry?" "I am." "Good." Jack drove, and they made it a mile in silence. Hoon watched the side of Jack's face in the passing streetlights. Jack's jaw was working in the same small, careful rhythm it had after the turbulence. In first class, Jack had the poise of someone born into boardrooms. In the driver's seat of his own car on a Tuesday night, he looked like a man who had forgotten how to breathe. "I need to tell you something," Jack said. "Okay. I have not been on a first date since I was 22. Hoon looked at him. "How old are you now?" 27. "Okay. I realize that is a long time. It is not the longest I have ever heard. How long has it been for you?" Hoon considered whether to lie. He did not. "I have never been on one." Jack looked at him. "Never. Never. That can't be right." "It is." Jack was quiet. He was driving, but Hoon watched him process this, could almost see it move across his face. "Okay," Jack said finally. "That is helpful." "Why?" "Because I spent the last 3 days reading articles." Hoon started laughing. He tried not to. He pressed his hand to his mouth and tried to be polite about it, and then he gave up and laughed properly, leaning his head against the headrest. And when he looked over, Jack was smiling. Not the small, controlled smile Hoon had seen in first class. A real one. It changed his entire face. "You read articles," Hoon said. "I read several." What did they say? A lot of contradictory things. Give me the highlights. You are supposed to ask open-ended questions. You are not supposed to talk about work in the first 10 minutes. You are supposed to make eye contact, but not so much that it is uncomfortable. You are not supposed to pay with cash. Why not cash? I do not remember. Something about the energy of it. The energy of cash. That is what the article said. Hoon was still laughing. I am going to ruin this, Jack said. He was smiling when he said it, but his voice was serious under the smile. I wanted to say that up front. So, you knew. Okay. You are taking this very well. I am a little nervous too. You are not showing it. I have had practice. At dates. At customer service. Jack glanced at him. The look he gave Hoon was not the look he had given him in first class. It was not the look of a man sliding his eyes over a flight attendant's face with polite detachment. It was direct, and it was curious. And it was a little stunned. Noted, Jack said. The restaurant was in River North, on a quiet side street. One of those places where the menu did not have prices. Jack had not, when he told Hoon about it, mentioned this. Hoon registered it at the host stand. When he looked down at the card in its leather folder and saw the blank spaces where the numbers should have been, he did not react. He had been raised better than to react. But Jack, who had been watching him, caught it. I did not think about that, Jack said, when they were seated. The no prices thing. I eat here sometimes for work. I am sorry. It is fine. If it is not fine, I can ask for the other menu. It is fine, Jack. It was the first time Hoon had said his name out loud. Jack registered it. His expression shifted, small and subtle, and Hoon did not have time to parse it because the waiter was back. Dinner took a long time to find its feet. The first stretch was choppy. Jack was clearly executing a mental checklist, asking open-ended questions in a careful rhythm, and ordering the wine with such visible effort that Hoon, who had already decided he was not drinking, accepted a glass just to be kind. And then, somewhere around the 20-minute mark, Jack asked Hoon what he did when he was not flying. And Hoon, who had not expected the question, said, without thinking, I study. Jack put down his fork. Study what? Aviation. A pause, and then Jack repeated it. Aviation. I am saving for flight school. I am going to be a pilot. It was the first time Hoon had said it out loud to someone who was not his mother, or Marisol, or the bank officer who had set up his high-yield savings account. Saying it to Jack felt like handing him something small and breakable, and trusting him not to drop it. Jack's face opened. Hoon would later try to describe it to himself and fail. Not surprise, not quite. Closer to a man seeing his own reflection. Tell me about it, Jack said. Hoon told him. Not all of it. Not at first. He told him about the license he was working toward, the hours he had already logged in a small rented Cessna out of a field in Indiana. He told him about the money, though not the exact numbers. He told him about the year and change timeline and the regional airlines he was eyeing as first jobs. Jack listened completely. He did not interrupt. He asked quiet, clarifying questions. And Hoon, who had spent 6 years working on this plan mostly in private, opened the whole thing up for a stranger and could not stop. He told him about his father, which he had not planned to. My dad was a pilot, Hoon said. He grounded when I was 11. Medical. Oh. He never flew again. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. That does not mean it was not a thing. Hoon looked at him, and Jack looked back. And around them, the restaurant did whatever restaurants did. Hoon could not hear any of it. What do you do? Hoon said eventually. I realize I have not asked. Jack smiled. The small one. The real one. Smaller than the laughter in the car one, but honest. I am a consultant, he said. Post-merger integration. Companies buy other companies and do not know how to put them together, and I get hired to figure out which systems stay and which systems go and which people to tell what and when. That sounds awful. It is sometimes. Do you like it? Jack considered. actually considered. Hoon watched him take the question seriously and appreciated it. I am good at it, Jack said. I am not sure that is the same thing. I like the parts where the work is about listening. I do not love the travel. I. How much do you travel? 3 weeks out of 4. For years. For years. Is that why you do not have a personal life? The question came out before Hoon could stop it. He heard it land. Jack laughed, the real laugh again. Short and surprised. That is one of the reasons. What are the others? Are we doing this now? I do not know what else to do. Jack picked up his wine glass. He did not drink. He held it, looked at it, set it down. I am not very good at this part, he said. Dating. Any of this. Wanting something. He turned the glass on the table. I thought being an alpha would do most of the work for me. It does not. I am quiet. I watch people. I am fine at it in conference rooms. He stopped, started again. I am less fine at it other places. Like here. Like here. The restaurant closed around them before either of them noticed. The waiter came over at some point to apologize, a little amused, and pointed out that the kitchen had been closed for a while. Jack looked at his watch with genuine surprise. Hoon looked at his phone. They had sat at the same table for most of the evening. Hoon could not account for the time. Jack paid. Hoon, who had decided several times during dinner that he was going to offer, did not have the energy to fight about it. Jack left. Hoon noticed. In cash. They walked out into Chicago in October, the wind coming up off the lake and cutting through Hoon's jacket. And Jack, without saying anything, took off his coat and put it around Hoon's shoulders. It was warm from his body. And the scent hit Hoon at full strength for the first time. Not the filtered in-flight version. The real thing. Jack smelled better than his coat had any right to, and under the tea and the smoke there was something warmer that Hoon had no name for. His knees, which had misbehaved during the turbulence, misbehaved again. He pulled the coat tighter around his shoulders on purpose, to hide it. You will be cold, Hoon said. I am fine. Jack. Hoon. Hoon stopped on the sidewalk. He looked up at him. Jack was close enough that Hoon could see the tiny line between his eyebrows, the one that appeared when he was concentrating. Did you have a good time? Hoon said. Jack took a second. Yes, he said. I did too. I would like to do this again. Okay. Soon. Okay. Jack's hand came up, very slowly, and Hoon thought he was going to touch his face. He did not. He adjusted the coat on Hoon's shoulder where it had slipped. He took his hand back carefully, like he was putting it down. Hoon understood then that Jack had decided before the date began not to try to kiss him goodnight, and was holding the line by force of will. Hoon, who had never been on a first date in his life, leaned up and kissed him. On the cheek, near the mouth, not on it, not yet. Jack's breath went out of him in a small, audible sound. Thank you, Hoon said, stepping back. For dinner. Jack could not immediately find his voice. When he did, it was rough at the edges, like it had been after the turbulence. You are welcome, he said. Hoon went up the steps of his building without looking back. He did not know, if he looked back, what he would do. He did know. As he reached his door and let himself in and stood in his dark studio with the coat still around his shoulders, that he had just done something that was going to be very hard to undo. He kept the coat, and he did not mean to. Jack texted the next morning saying he had forgotten to take it and Hoon could drop it at the front desk of his building whenever was easy, no rush. Hoon, reading the text, understood what it was. Jack was giving him an out. If Hoon had changed his mind in the morning light, he could leave the coat with a doorman and they would never have to see each other again. Hoon texted back, I will give it to you next time. He wore the coat around his apartment for 2 days. He told himself it was because it was cold. It was not cold. It was because every time he put it on, he could smell Jack. And every time he smelled Jack, some part of him that had spent 6 years holding very still against a dream was allowed. for a few minutes, to hold still against something else instead. On the third day, Jack took him to dinner again. On the fourth, a walk. By the end of the second week, Hoon had stopped counting dates and started counting days since he had last seen him. Which was worse? Jack was, to Hoon's increasing dismay, easier and easier to be around. The article-reading awkwardness of the first night had not gone away. It had relocated. It showed up in small, specific places, like the moment Jack tried to order for both of them at a diner and got so flustered by the waitress's friendliness that he forgot what Hoon wanted. Hoon had laughed at him. Something in Jack's face had gone quietly pleased, and Hoon, watching it, had understood that this was a face Jack did not make for other people. Their second date ended with Jack's hand on the small of Hoon's back as he guided him through a crowded sidewalk, and the pressure of his palm was so deliberate, so careful, that Hoon felt it through his coat for the rest of the night. A few dates later, Jack's thumb brushed the inside of Hoon's wrist where the bracelet sat, a 1-second gesture that was over before Hoon could respond to it. The next one ended in Jack's apartment, though not in any of the ways Hoon had been afraid it would end. They had gone to a movie. Hoon had worked a turnaround that day, Chicago to San Francisco and back, and had come straight from the airport to meet Jack in River North. They had eaten. They had gone to a late show of something Hoon was not going to remember. Halfway through the movie, Hoon, who had been up since 4 a.m, had put his head on Jack's shoulder for what he intended to be a moment, and he had woken up during the credits, and Jack had not moved. "How long?" Hoon said, blinking. "Most of the movie. I am sorry." "Do not be. Why did you not wake me?" Jack looked at him in the dim theater light with an expression Hoon had not seen on him before, completely unguarded. "I did not want to," he said. Hoon had gone back to Jack's apartment because he did not trust himself on the blue line at that hour, and because Jack had offered, and because Hoon, in the taxi over, had realized that if he said no, he was going to spend the rest of the night in his studio thinking about exactly what he had said no to. He did not mean to fall asleep on the couch, but he did. The last thing he remembered was Jack sitting down at the other end of it with 2 glasses of water and saying, in a voice that was trying very hard to be matter-of-fact, "I have made up the guest room for you." Hoon had meant to thank him. He had meant to get up. He had meant, at the very least, to stay awake through the next sentence. When he came back to consciousness, it was light out, and he was lying down, and there was a blanket over him, and his shoes were off, and there was a cup of coffee on the side table next to his head, still steaming, with a small handwritten note under it that said Times Black. 1 sugar. I hope that is right. Hoon lay very still. He could smell Jack everywhere. On the blanket, on the pillow under his head, on the couch cushions. The apartment was quiet. Jack was not in the room. Hoon did not know where Jack had slept, but Hoon had slept on the couch, fully clothed, under a blanket, with coffee waiting for him. And Jack, who had driven him home from their first date in an ordinary sedan to avoid being ostentatious, had apparently gotten up early enough to make the coffee before Hoon woke up. Hoon pressed his face into the pillow and stayed like that for a long time. When he finally got up, Jack was in the kitchen. He was reading something on his laptop. He was in a soft gray t-shirt and pajama pants, and his hair was damp from the shower. And when he looked up at Hoon standing in the kitchen doorway in yesterday's clothes with sleep still on his face, he looked at Hoon the same way he had looked at him across the restaurant table on the first date, like Hoon was the only thing in the room he could clearly see. "Good morning," Jack said. "Hi. Did you sleep?" "I slept on your couch." "I meant well." "I slept well." Jack nodded. He went back to his laptop. He did not push. He kept the moment small, even though Hoon could see, in the set of his shoulders, that he wanted more of it. Hoon drank the coffee. It was exactly right. He did not know how Jack knew. Hoon had barely ordered coffee in front of him. Jack had noticed. Hoon sat down across from him at the kitchen counter and drank the coffee and watched Jack pretend to read his laptop. And sitting there, he understood that he had not been safe like this in a long time. Not safe in the physical sense. Safe because someone else had bothered to know how he took his coffee. His whole adult life had been him taking care of himself very efficiently, and it had never occurred to him to miss the alternative. He was going to have to think about this. The first time Hoon noticed the slipping, it was a Wednesday. He was on a Chicago to San Francisco rotation, forward galley, first class. He had slept at Jack's on Monday night and had taken the blue line home Tuesday morning with his head full of Jack's kitchen and Jack saying times, "Text me when you land," and he had not entirely come back to himself since. He had shown up to the gate on time, done his checks, and greeted the first-class passengers with his usual professional brightness. And then, somewhere over Nebraska, a woman in first class had pressed her call button, and Hoon had not heard it. It was not a long delay. Marisol, working the back of first class, had registered the chime before Hoon had. She had caught Hoon's eye through the galley curtain and tilted her head toward the seat, and Hoon had snapped out of whatever he had been thinking about, gone to the woman, apologized smoothly, taken her order for a second glass of wine, delivered it with a smile, and thought nothing more of it. Marisol pulled him aside in the galley later. "Hoon, I know. You did not hear it. I know. Where were you?" "Not here." Marisol looked at him in silence until Hoon wanted to squirm. "This is a verbal," she said. "Not a write-up. But I am noting it. I know. Whatever is going on in your life that is louder than the cabin, I need you to put it down when you are in uniform. I know. Your packet goes up in March." She said it mildly, not accusing. Just a fact he was supposed to hold in both hands. "I know that too. Then we are done." She did not elaborate. She did not need to. Marisol had flown longer than Hoon had been alive, and her not elaborating was, in its own way, more terrifying than a lecture would have been. Hoon spent the return flight that evening with his full attention on the cabin and hated that it was that easy. He had been daydreaming about a man who said times, "Text me when you land" times and a cup of coffee made correctly on the first try, and the daydreaming had cost him a verbal warning. He did not feel that the daydreaming had been worth the warning. He felt, more than that it should not have required the warning to make him take stock of it. He texted Jack on the flight home. "I need to be careful about work right now." "Can we talk?" Jack replied at the baggage claim. "Of course. Tell me what you need." Hoon stood by the carousel with his roller bag at his feet and reread the sentence. He had expected some version of what an article would have warned him about. Pushback or hurt feelings or a version of Jack that needed reassurance. He had gotten times, "Tell me what you need," typed cleanly into his phone without a follow-up question, and the half-dozen explanations Hoon had rehearsed on the flight home went unused. "I just need to be a little more careful about when we see each other, so I can be present at work." "Understood. You set the schedule. I will meet you where you are." Hoon put his phone in his pocket and wheeled his bag out of baggage claim and got on the L and thought, "I do not know how to be with someone who is this easy to be with." They cut back for a week. "No weeknights," Hoon said. "Weekends only." Jack agreed without negotiation. He sent Hoon a text on Tuesday that said, "I am not going to be in contact until Friday. I am not ignoring you. I am practicing restraint. It is new for me." Hoon reread it more times than he would later want to admit. The week went fine at work. Hoon caught every call. He made every pour. He walked up and down first class with the crisp, attentive presence he had built his reputation on. And Marisol, watching him over her reading glasses, let it go. On Friday night, Jack took him to a quieter restaurant. No leather menu. A place with prices. Hoon ordered an entree that cost what he would normally spend on a week of groceries, and he let himself enjoy it. And when Jack reached across the table and took his hand for the first time, deliberate and careful, Hoon let him. They went back to Jack's apartment, and Hoon did not sleep on the couch that time. Nothing happened that crossed any line either of them had not already crossed. Hoon slept in Jack's bed because Jack's bed was bigger and softer than any bed Hoon had ever slept in, and because Jack, when he offered it, said times, "I will take the couch" times with such genuine intention that Hoon, who had been getting tired of being careful, said times, "Stay" times instead. Jack stayed. Hoon fell asleep with Jack's arm around his waist, and Jack, who had not had someone in his bed in longer than he would later admit to, did not move all night. Hoon had set 3 alarms, because he always set 3 alarms. It was the single discipline he had never, in 6 years of flying, failed at. Phone, tablet, and a small travel clock he carried in his work bag. On a weekday before a flight, all 3 went off. On a weekend off, he set only the phone. On this Saturday morning, which was a weekend with a Monday flight, he had set the phone, and he had told himself he would set the others on Sunday night when he got home from Jack's. He had gone home on Sunday afternoon. He had meant to set the other 2 alarms, had pulled the travel clock out of his bag and put it on the nightstand, and then Jack had texted, and Hoon had answered, and Hoon had not plugged the clock in. His phone, at some point in the night, updated itself. This was the part Hoon, lying on the floor of his studio 6 hours later, could not forgive himself for. He knew what phone updates did to his alarm app. He had always double-checked after a Sunday update, every single week. He had not done it this Sunday, because his head was full of Jack's bed. Hoon's alarm did not go off. Hoon's phone rebooted in the middle of the night, and when it came back up, the alarm app had reset itself to off, and Hoon slept through it. He woke up to sunlight coming through the studio's one window. He looked at his phone, and then he looked at it again, disbelieving. His flight had boarded without him. He sat up so fast the room moved. He called the airline's crew desk with hands that were shaking, and a voice he had never spoken to said, calmly, that he had been marked as a no-show, that the flight had gone out short-staffed, that he would need to report to the duty manager's office on his next available day, and that no, the duty manager was not available to speak to now. Hoon sat on the edge of his bed and put his phone face down on the sheets and stared at the wall. He did not cry. He was too far inside it to cry. What he felt was more like a sound he could not hear. A flat, high note inside his skull. The exact feeling of having spent 6 years of his life building something, and then, in a few minutes, kicking it. He got to the duty manager's office in the afternoon. He wore his uniform. He did not need to. He wore it because he could not stand to sit in front of her in street clothes like a civilian. He sat across from a woman named Denise, whom he had met exactly once before, and Denise, who did not know him and had no reason to be gentle, was gentle about it. Hoon, Denise said, this is your first attendance issue. Yes. You understand that we take no-shows very seriously. Yes. What happened? Hoon told her. Not all of it. He told her about the phone update and the alarm app resetting, and he showed her the forum threads he had documented by then. Denise looked at the forum threads. Her expression did not change. This is going to be a written warning, she said. A strike. It goes on your permanent record. You have 2 more on file with us before your employment is reviewed. Do you understand? Yes. You should also know that this comes off your purser packet. Hoon's stomach turned over. Off it entirely. You can resubmit next cycle. You will need a clean year between now and then. Next cycle is in 18 months. Yes. Hoon looked at his hands on the desk. 18 months was the difference between starting flight school next year and starting it past his 27th birthday. 18 months was a purser's pay rate he had already budgeted into the last stretch of his flight school savings. Gone now. He had not even cost himself the job. He had cost himself the next version of the job. Is there anything else I should know? Denise said. There was. There was a man Hoon had slept next to 2 nights earlier, who had made him coffee in the morning, who was the reason Hoon's head had not been in the window seat it should have been in. No, Hoon said. Denise signed the form. Hoon signed the form. Hoon left the office and went down to the employee parking garage and sat in his car for a long time without turning the key. He did not text Jack that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Jack noticed within a few hours. The first text was times how was the flight. Hoon did not reply. There were others. None of them got a reply until the 3rd day. When Jack sent times I do not want to pressure you. If you need space, take it. Just let me know you are all right. And Hoon, reading it at his kitchen table in the clothes he had slept in, typed times I am all right times and sent it, and put his phone face down and did not pick it up again for the rest of the day. It took Jack several days to come to the apartment. He did not call first. He did not text to ask if it was okay. He came in the evening, in the coat Hoon had given back to him weeks ago. Hoon had not eaten properly in days. He had not shaved. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt that had a small coffee stain on the collar. And when the buzzer went off downstairs and Hoon, out of habit, hit the intercom, and Jack's voice came through the small speaker saying, "Times, Hoon, it is me. Can I come up?" Hoon stood there with his finger on the button and thought about saying no. He did not say no. He buzzed Jack up. He met him at the door in the sweatpants and did not apologize for the sweatpants. Jack, standing in the hallway, looked at him with an expression that made clear that the sweatpants were the least of what Jack was reading, and Jack asked, very quietly, if he could come inside. Hoon stepped back and let him in. The studio was small. There was nowhere to sit that was not the bed or the kitchen table. Jack chose the kitchen table. He did not take off his coat. He sat with his hands loosely folded on the surface and waited. And Hoon, who had been dreading this for days, found that the dread did not make the conversation easier to start. "I have had a hard week at work," Hoon said. Finally. "Okay. I missed a flight." "What do you mean, missed?" "I slept through my alarm. My phone updated overnight. The alarm reset. I was a no-show." Jack absorbed it. He was good at absorbing. He did not react like people with less practice would have reacted. "What does that mean for the job?" Jack said. "It is a strike, a written warning. I get 2 more and they review my employment." "I am sorry. That is not all. I lost my purser spot." Jack did not know what that meant. Hoon could see him work it out that he did not know, and Hoon could see him decide not to ask, and Hoon told him anyway. "It is a senior position, a promotion. Marisol put me up for it months ago. Attendance is the weighted metric. The strike pulls me off the packet. Next cycle is in 18 months. Okay. It is the pay I was going to use on the last of flight school." "Hoon." "I missed a passenger call," Hoon said. "Before that, I was daydreaming. And I have been slower this week. I have been distracted. I have been thinking about you at work, and I cannot afford to think about you at work." "Okay. This job is what is paying for flight school. I know. If I lose this job, I do not have another one like it. I would have to start over. I am 24, and I have been saving since I was 18, and I am almost there. I cannot lose this. Not for anything." Jack's hands, on the table, were very still. "Okay. I like you. I like you too." "A lot," Hoon said. His voice cracked on the word. "I want you to know that. I know. I have to stop." Jack did not move, and Hoon sat down across from him. He had to. His legs were not working right. He put his elbows on the table and put his face in his hands. And when he took his hands away, Jack was still looking at him with the same steady, absorbing expression, and Hoon realized that he was going to have to say it plainly. "I cannot do this right now," Hoon said. "I am sorry." "Hoon, please do not. Let me pay for it." Hoon looked up. Jack was leaning forward slightly. His hands were still folded. His voice was calm. "Let me pay for flight school," Jack said. "You told me what you have saved and what you need. I can cover the rest. You quit the job. You go to school. You do not lose the dream, and you do not lose me." The room went quiet. Hoon felt it hit him in the chest before he could understand why. He felt his throat close. He felt, for the first time in a week that had already been bad, actual tears at the back of his eyes. "No," Hoon said. "Hoon." "No. It is $30,000. It is not a big number. I can have it in your account tomorrow, and none of this would be happening." "Jack, you are throwing us away over $30,000. I am not throwing us away over the money." "Then what?" Hoon opened his mouth and closed it, because what he wanted to say was too big to get out in one breath. "You think the money is the problem," Hoon said. The money is not the problem. The money is the point. I do not understand. I know you do not. That is what I am trying to tell you. Jack waited. Hoon stood up. He did not plan to. He was up before he understood he needed to be. Do you know what is in that savings account? Hoon said. Every dollar in it. Do you know what I gave up for it? You told me some of it. Some of it. I have been doing this job since I was 18, Jack. 6 years on the line. Every paycheck I ever earned, some of it went into that account before I let myself see what was left. I did not miss a single month. Rent I kept low. Nights I stayed in. A spreadsheet I update the first of every month. And the number at the bottom of the spreadsheet is the only thing in my life I have ever built one piece at a time. When I look at it, I am looking at every small thing I chose over something easier. I am looking at myself. I know you worked hard. No, you do not know. Because when you look at that number, you see $30,000 that you can move around in an afternoon. When I look at that number, I see 6 years of my life. They are not the same thing. I am not trying to erase what you did. You are, though. That is exactly what paying it would do. Jack's voice, when it came back, was careful. Hoon, listen to yourself. You just got a written warning. You just lost your purser spot. You are 18 months further from where you were last Monday. I can make that stop being true. I can take that off you tonight. And you want to walk away from us to keep feeling it. Yes, that is not rational. I know. This is pride. Maybe. Hoon's hands were flat on the table. The anger from earlier had burned off. What was left underneath was worse. He was clear. When my father grounded, Hoon said, a man he used to fly with offered to put him in a simulator program. For free. A favor. My father said no, and the man asked him why, and my father said because then the flying would not be mine anymore. It would be the favor. And he could not bear to love something he did not earn. Did he ever fly again? No. Hoon, I know how that sounds. I know what you are about to say. He would have flown. He would have flown and he would have had his life back, and he chose a principle over the thing he loved. And now he sits at a desk and has a shelf in him that is empty. And you are looking at me, and you are thinking, do not do what he did. Yes, I am not him. Then take the money. I cannot, Jack. I cannot and keep being the person who made it mine. Those are the same person. I do not know how to explain that to you more than I already have. You are asking me to watch you suffer for no reason. I am asking you to understand why I need to. I cannot. I know. Jack put his hands flat on the table, mirror of Hoon's, and for a second Hoon thought he was going to argue again. And Hoon thought, if he argues, I will cave, because I want him to argue, and then Jack did not argue. Jack took a breath and let it out and nodded once, to himself, like a man signing something. I do not agree with you, Jack said. I want you to know that. I think you are wrong, and I think in 5 years you will know you were wrong. But I heard you. Okay. I do not know how to be with someone who would rather lose me than let me help. I do not know how to be with someone who cannot tell the difference between helping me and handling me. They looked at each other across the table. Hoon watched Jack take that in, actually take it in, and he watched Jack realize that they had been having 2 different conversations for the last 40 minutes, and that neither of them was going to cross to the other side of it. Jack sat at the table a little longer, and then he stood up. He did it slowly, like a man getting up from an injury. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat. Hoon had not heard him sound like that before. Okay, Jack said. He picked up the coat off the back of the chair and walked to the door and paused with his hand on the knob, and he did not look back. Take care of yourself, Hoon. He opened the door, let himself out, and the door closed behind him, not softly and not hard, just closed, like a door closes when someone has decided, firmly, to leave. Hoon stood in his kitchen for a long time. He could not move. He had been right. That was the part he could not stop running through. He had said what he meant, and he had meant what he said. And Jack, who was a good man, who was trying, had not been able to meet him there. There was no misunderstanding to go back and fix. They had understood each other perfectly. Hoon slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. He put his head on his knees. He did not cry right away. When he did, it was quiet. A silence he recognized. The one he had fallen into as a boy when his father came home from the physical and sat at the dinner table and did not eat. He thought about the 18 months. He thought about the spreadsheet he would still be updating on the 1st of every month. Now, with the number Jack could have made disappear in an afternoon, he thought about how much cheaper it would have been to say yes. Outside, the blue line went past. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, tell me your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear from you.